DIY Dollar Tree supplies and pallet scrap pieces project. Or you can use trash to treasure leftover jello boxes. What we're going to make is this DIY was inspired by Cindy at Mimi's Mixed Bag. I will put her link in the description box below. This is the pallet cuts off, and they have been drilled out all the way through, and then there's one all the way through at the top. You can also use a leftover jello pudding box. This is a great fabric scrap buster because you'll only need some scrap pieces of fabric that are 2 inches wide, some polyfill, some jute twine and or ribbon, some buttons from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be using my choice of paints of the Waverly, which is the lavender, and the ink of the chalk paints. The Dollar Tree Scarecrow heads we'll be using as well. So let's get to it. We're going to base coat these pallet scraps first, and that will be in any color that you want to coordinate. Elizabeth here on the Dandy Soap DIY channel. I am doing a collaboration with Jackie Burns Creations, a dear friend of mine here on YouTube. She's new to YouTube, but she is definitely not new to creating. She has been a creator, an art teacher, and history teacher, and she retired, so now this is her creative outlet, is here on YouTube. You're going to get a 2-for-1 when you visit Miss Jackie, because not only did she come up with a whole other clever idea of making this shelf sitter, she tells a story, and that is my favorite reason to go visit her. We are celebrating our inspirational channel, which is Cindy of Mimi's Mixed Bag. I will put Jackie's link in the description box down below, along with Cindy's of Mimi's Mixed Bag. Now you can use a cut-off 2x4 from pallet scraps, so a great pallet project. You would drill a hole all the way through the top for the arms and 2 holes down to bottom for the legs. But guys, no worries. If you don't have a pallet cut off, guess what? You can use a jello pudding box. Ain't that cool? So, don't worry. It's a great fabric buster. You'll get to use your Dollar Tree items, and if you happen to have pallet cut-offs, use those. But if not, go make some pudding and keep the box. So without further ado, let's go make our little trick-or-treater shelf sitter and our Scarecrow Shelf Sitter. See you in the craft room. Now to make my buttons match my front here, the green ones are going to match pretty good that I got from the Dollar Tree button, but the orange ones are real translucent, so I'm going to use my paint marker and I'm going to paint them. Because my buttons are translucent, I'm going to flip them over. And another trick you can do is paint them with a more solid opaque color like white or black, and that will help them to be more solid looking and not so translucent. You can also use a black magic marker to paint the underside of these, and then do your other side the color that you want. Now, so that you can see that little trick I was telling you about when you paint it either black or white on the opposite side, and I've already painted that with an orange paint marker to make it show up. As you can see, now you can see that that is an orange button, and they were translucent before. So that's just a little trick you can do, is always remember, if you're using a translucent button, just to flip it over, and so that the color shows up that is brilliant as you want. It looks more solid like these. Paint either the white or black on the underside of the button. Okay, so now I'm going to glue my buttons on to my little trick-or-treater here. And it just is only going to take a smidge of glue. Now, because mine is an actual 2x4 cutoff with a hole drilled through it, and it's slightly bigger than the jello box, because you can use a jello box in place of this. Just put some pebbles in it per Cindy to weight it down, and you'll put your hole all the way through. And the same here, you go to the sides for the arms. The original measurement is 2 inches wide by 14 inches long for the legs, 2 inches wide by 12 inches long for the arms. And because mine is a little bit bigger, I'm going to cut mine a little bit bigger. But if you are using a jello box, or you have a 2x4 that's closer fit to that jello box, you might want to do like I'm doing. Anything extra, I'm just going to cut off. Now I'm going to use the orange-hatted Scarecrow, and while I'm at it, I'm going to rob it of this skew, or this wooden dowel, because I'm going to need that in order to stuff the legs and arms into my block. Now guys, I do put a very fine bead on the very edge and fold this in half, but stay tuned because I'm fixing to show you a shortcut that's much easier. Go at it, you can kind of fold it, tuck it in, and once you get that through the hole, you can pull it through the back, and then you're going to feed it back through. So you got that one coming through, and actually I didn't even need my skew. You're going to pull that through, and then I'm folding it again, running it back through the hole to the front, and I'm just turning mine so I can get a hold of it. Turn it back so it won't be twisted. And those are the legs. Get them evened up here. And now we'll take and we'll stuff our polyfill in here. So one change I made, guys, is once I fed this through and had my legs out here, I unglued them. I actually pulled them loose because I have my glue gun on low temp, and I'm going to take the polyfill and just lay in that channel of this, and then I'm going to glue it back together, and then that way it'll be a lot easier on you. And so I just found that that's an easier resolve, because you can stuff it in with the skew, but it's going to take you a mite bit longer. And so just kind of lay that in there. You could use scraps or polyfill, or even a plastic bag would work inside of this, because it's just to fill out the legs, and then we're going to be tying some ribbon at the joint areas in order to make them look like a bent knee and a bent elbow on the arm part. So I just thought I would give y'all that little tidbit, and then I'm going to glue these closed. Get that leg out of my way. So to help me maneuver, I'm actually putting my glue on the fabric down the edge there. Make sure your glue gun's on cool. I'm taking my skew and holding my polyfill down out of the way, and then I'm pressing my seams closed, and voila, we have our leg stuffed. And I'm going to do this side the same way. I'm going to lay it on its side. That keeps that seam out back here down at the bottom so that you don't see it. And then I'm going to lay this one out of my way. I'm pulling my glue loose, and I'm going to place my polyfill in there and just lay it in that channel. Make sure you pull your polyfill loose so that it fluffs it up, because you only need the smallest amount. That's why I said a plastic bag or even scrap fabric, anything you want to fill this little channel, because you only need a minute amount. And I'm going to go up here, and I guess we could turn this over where you can see the bottom, and then I'm just doing a section at a time. And now I can do the next part. And this takes a little more time, but it's a whole lot easier than trying to stuff that polyfill in that fabric with it already closed up. I just thought y'all might find that a little bit easier and less cumbersome if we just do it this way. Okay, I'm going to put the arm in there. So I'm taking my fabric, I've already glued it together, and I'm just folding it to where it's straighter. They'll make it easier to run through the hole. As you pull the arms through, fill it with the polyfill just like you did the legs. You'll repeat the same task with your fabric on your Scarecrow as well. So now that I've done my first one, to do my Scarecrow and speed the process up, I'm going to do 3/4 of the piece of fabric, and then I'm going to feed it in through the arms and legs, and leave the one side undone. Now I had a bow that I had torn off of another little sign that I had, and it's got the raffia in it. So to add a little interest to my scarecrow, I'm going to take about 1.5 inches of that, and I'm going to fold it in half and cut that, and I'm going to glue that to the leg, inside the legs, and that way when I glue them closed, that will be sticking out, and that'll help any of the polyfill from coming out. So I'm actually just placing it in there, and now I'm going to glue my fabric closed on each side, and then that way I'll have my scarecrow's little feet hanging out. Then I can just fluff those and trim them off if I need to. I have some of this orange jute twine that I had gotten from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use that to tie right here at his feet. Okay, now we can put our scarecrow's head on there. Finish by tying jute twine at each one of the joints of the knee and the elbow. Then to add some interest, shred out the raffia by tearing it with your hands or clipping it with scissors. And then do the hair the same way. And you can clip that and trim it back and just give it a little haircut and just give it that special touch. That's the scarecrow. We got her legs fixed and we got the arms fixed, and I've added some raffia and kind of frayed it out and trimmed back everything. Got her hat and everything situated and fluffed out all of her corn shuck. She's looking pretty good. Now it's time to work on our trick-or-treater. She turned out pretty cute. So now let's work on our trick-or-treater. And they had these pumpkins at Dollar Tree, and actually Cindy used a pumpkin on her trick-or-treater. So I thought that was a grand idea. I'm going to do the same. So I decided to take some of that raffia, and I just pulled a bunch off and doubled it up, and I'm going to glue some here in the back and glue some right here in the front on the edge of my wood. And then once it's glued into place, I'm going to put my pumpkin on there, dimension to it and some difference, just something a little change up here. And then I also tied some together and made it really messy, and you just tear it, separate it, and like a child I'm going to glue that to the back side of this pumpkin, just a small amount right here in the back. There. So I decided that my little girl trick-or-treater needed a bow. So I basically just cut me a piece of fabric. I'm going to fold it, and I'm going to turn this piece at an angle and fold it just like that. I'm going to put just a dab of hot glue so that that little angle will stay. And then I'm going to put a little dab there. And just barely anything, just whatever's on the nozzle of my glue gun to get those two to stick together so it looks like a bow. And I'm just going to glue that on the raffia. Just place it on there so it makes it look like she's got a bow in her hair, because I don't want to tie it together. That way it looks a little more girly. And I think I'll do the same on this side. And you can form these if you kind of work your polyfill. Those joints will stay bent, especially once it's sitting on a shelf. Just kind of work it up so that it stays kinked there, stays bent. And the same with the arms. If you kind of work it to where that polyfill is up this way. The arms will come in for you. And if you need to, you can even glue them together. So that's what I'll do. Put a little dab there. Put those arms together so that they stay in front like that. Really cute. And I added eyes, and I even put a smile on the pumpkin. And then if I find a little hat, I can put a little hat up there on the top. You can even take this off if you wanted to. It really depends on what look you're going for. And I'm going to probably put candy in that since I don't have a hat. I could put some candy in there. So there is our trick-or-treater. And I think she just looks adorable. She just looks really cute and, you know, very, very trick-or-treaty. So that's our little trick-or-treater, and when she sits on the shelf, and I will show y'all some better pictures of her. Thank you so much for tuning in to this channel and taking the time to view this video. Please don't forget to go visit Jackie Burns Creations, the link's in the description box down below, whom I'm in collaboration with, and see the clever way that she did this shelf sitter. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Tag me on Dandy Soap DIY on Instagram or join the gang at Facebook page and show me your project. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I appreciate your consideration by hitting the subscribe word. When the bell comes up, click the bell. You're now part of the gang. Thank you, and stay tuned for the B-roll.